Bitcoin is close to becoming worthless.
Let's go. Now, what's the Bitcoin?
Bitcoin's like rat poison.
Yeah. Oh,
The greatest scam in history.
let's get it.
Bitcoin will go to fucking zero.
Yeah.
Alright, you ungovernable misfits. I'm your host, Max. Everybody knows that Bitcoin is useless, worthless, and doomed to fail. But what if everyone's wrong? What if it's the system that is doomed to fail? Join me as I speak to some of the brightest people in the space and slither to the deepest, darkest depths of the Bitcoin rabbit hole. Welcome back, everyone. Today's episode is with Fractal Encrypt. He is one of my favourite artists, and I feel like this episode is well overdue. I've wanted to speak to him for a long time, and he did not disappoint. We got into art, Bitcoin, LSD, other psychedelics, and freedom. I really enjoyed chatting to him, and I'd love to have him on the show again. If you haven't already checked out his art, I'm going to put some links in the show notes, and I strongly suggest you do. Before we start, I have an announcement. I'm pretty excited about this. I have a new sponsor on board, and I can guarantee you won't have heard of them because they are anonymous. They're not shilling anything, they don't want anything. They have just reached out to me and said, I want to take a slot. I've asked them if they have any message they want to give, and they've said not for now. The one thing that they did say is they really want to push value for value, and that they're happy that this show hasn't yielded to the yielding scams or any of the other bullshit. And that's something that I take pride in. My sponsors that I have on this show I'm very happy with, and you know, it can always be tempting to go and take the sats up front to have a product that ends up shitting on listeners, but that is not something that I ever want to do on this show. I also don't think it should be something that's happening in the space at all, or that we should be standing for. The whole point in this is to get away from the fiat fuckery and all the bullshit out there. If we start allowing that, we're no better than the people whose power we wish to take. I could waffle all day about this, but sincerely from the bottom of my heart, to whoever this anonymous sponsor is, I want to thank you. It makes a massive difference to my life. It makes a massive difference to keeping this show going. And I do want to push a little bit harder on the value for value. I will never have sponsors on here that are going to hurt my listeners. So if anyone is listening on Fountain and streaming sats, then thank you so much. It really is appreciated. If you want to support the show and you don't already have Breeze or Fountain, you can reach out to me if you want some help setting it up, or you can reach out to anyone in the community. It is becoming easier and easier to use, and every sat helps. I also want to say thank you to my current sponsors. These two sponsors have allowed me to say whatever the fuck I want. They've not reined me in or tried to make me shill. They've just said, do your thing and we want to support, and that is incredible. It's especially impressive for fast Bitcoins because I always say literally not to use them. Literally do not use a KYC service. Mine at home, buy off BISC, do whatever you can to get those sats KYC free. But I know that not everyone's going to do that, and that's why I have them as a sponsor. Of all the exchanges that I know, I trust this team the most. I think they're really cool. They are proper Bitcoiners, and they do everything that they can to keep you safe. They also do not want to hold your sats. They push you as hard as possible to self-custody. So, for those of you who won't listen to me or desperately want to stack, or have family members who just won't work out BISC and don't want to do it in cash and don't want to do home mining or any of the other things that I suggest, then the people to use, without question, are Fast Bitcoins. Go to fastbitcoins.com. And finally, Foundation Devices. These guys are absolutely incredible. I chased them for many months to get them as a sponsor on this show, and I love what the team are doing. They are making the most cypherpunk hardened hardware available to fuckwits like me. It really is incredibly easy to use Foundation Devices Passport. You can link this to your favourite desktop wallets like Spectre or Sparrow. You can also use it with Blue Wallet or with Foundation's own app. Get your sats off exchange and onto your Foundation Devices Passport. It is so simple to use that if you have any problem, don't even bother asking the team. You can reach out to me and I can help you. That is how simple this thing is to use. Go to foundationdevices.com and use the code BITBYBIT to get $10 off your purchase. Final words before we jump in is just to say thank you to everyone who's been supporting the show, everyone who's been writing reviews, and everyone who has given me feedback on ungovernablemisfits.com. If you haven't checked it out already, then please do, and I'd love to have feedback, good or bad. Enjoy the show. Fractal, can you hear me?
I can hear you good. I may need to put my headphones on. Do I sound okay? Am I feeding back?
No, you sound good.
Oh, good. Okay, cool. All right, fantastic. Well, that's good because sometimes when I know if you have the audio and the mic, it creates weird feedback. So, all right, if this works, then rock and roll.
How was your lunch? You were making me hungry. I don't know why, but I just imagined you were having something really, really fucking good, and I'm fasting.
Oh, no. We won't get too much into the lunch then, but I will give full credit to my wife who, is constantly helping me do the things I do. She's like, you ate, right? You're going to eat before this thing, right? So it's like, no, I didn't. I don't actually usually remember to do all that stuff. So yeah, she helped keep me on balance and on point. So she actually made it, brought it up to me, made sure I was going to have something before I continue my day. So very thankful for her.
That's awesome. I'll remind my missus about that and just say, come on, step the game up.
Absolutely, for sure. I try to keep the balance. You try to keep a good. I try to be valuable to her too as well.
That's cool. And is she a Bitcoiner as well, or does she think you're a nutcase?
Man, I'm so proud of her. She's come a long way. I think, she's still not, I wouldn't say a Bitcoiner, but she's fully in there. Like when we go out and some of her friends mention they're into cryptocurrencies or something, she's like, oh, like shit coins or Bitcoin. and then, her mom actually called her, I guess, when the price went from whatever it was to 20,000. And she's like, my mom called and said, are you guys okay? And it's like, I just tell her like, hey, this is the time to buy, and I was like, man, I'm so proud. She's like getting all this stuff through osmosis somehow. So even though like, I do think she thinks I'm a little out there sometimes, like she fully seems to be on board and get a lot of this stuff. So somehow it's getting through.
I love that. Well, there seems to be some sort of correlation with like how artistic someone is, how crazy they are, and how much they understand Bitcoin. And like somewhere in the middle of that triangle are generally the most interesting people to speak to. I mean, this conversation, it feels like, is well overdue. I wanted to get you on the show for a couple of years now. And then I was one of the guys running 21ism.
Okay, nice.
So we had you in block 4 and fucking micro Chad MTC swooped in and was like, yeah, I'm going to be speaking to him. You bastard. Do that one. And
that's the first one I'd ever done. The first time I really ever spoke to anybody in a podcast format at all. So that was pretty cool. So, you're getting me a little more polished than maybe he did. I've done too many at this bill. More than one. More than zero.
Yeah, well, it was. I was very jealous of him. Luckily, I mean, I got to speak to Evan Kaludis, and that was a fucking cool conversation. So that softened the blow.
Yeah. He's a badass.
I love Evan. He's so fucking cool.
Yeah, I got to see him talk a couple times. Yeah, I love him.
When your art came about and I first saw it, I mean, all of us, there was at the time, I think 4 of us involved in 21ism. We had our different categories. We had our art and video design and code. And we all, as soon as we saw your work, were just like, this is really fucking cool and different. I was like, is it a sculpture? Like, I don't know what category to put it into. I think we ended up putting it into design. There's not a lot of stuff where the more you look at it, the more intrigued you are. And that's something I found with Bitcoin, and it's something I found with your work as well, because the detail that you put into this stuff and the thought that's obviously gone in is mind blowing. And so, that's why I was really interested to speak to you, because a lot of people who are involved in Bitcoin, they just, they say the parrot the same old stuff and, number go up and blah, blah, blah. But there's not many really, truly deep thinkers. And I have a feeling from looking at this work, Bitcoin and all this stuff pulses through your veins. Oh, have I lost you?
I think it went quiet for just the briefest second, but I did get what you were saying there, and I'm certainly honored, and it's really amazing to hear what people think about the stuff that I make, because pretty much all this stuff is made in a vacuum. I just basically sit alone in my room and just kind of work this out and sit in front of the computer and the machines and basically just make this stuff all happen in absence of really any commentary until it's finished. Like, I'm not the type of person that likes to show like progress work, like, hey, here it's coming along, this is kind of what it looks like, because to some part of me feels like, maybe that jinxes it, or like, what if you can't actually pull this thing fully off? Because I always try to work a little bit of beyond my skill set, so it's like always a risk. Everything I'm doing is very risky in a sense, so it's like maybe I'll be able to do it, maybe I won't. So a lot of times no one gets to see anything until okay, it's completed. I've been trying to take some more progress shots because I've been making books that go along with the different sculptures. So for the people that buy them, I actually save some of this and actually include it in a physical book that they get along with the sculpture. So that way, if they have the sculpture on the wall and somebody comes over, they're having a whiskey, enjoying it, say, hey, that looks cool. Well, hey, you can check out the book, and it basically goes through all the different details that are in the sculpture, and then specific to them, the transactions that I send to the network for their specific sculpture, because each sculpture I actually do a Bitcoin transaction, so it goes on chain and kind of puts the certificate of authenticity on the Bitcoin blockchain, so that way it's there forever. A lot of art, it comes with the certificate of authenticity. It's a paper thing. You don't know whether it's legit or not, and that could get...
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you. See, I was going along, talking and talking. I had no idea we disconnected.
Oh, no. I'm sorry. It's almost definitely my fault. I've taken my VPN off now, but my internet here is a fucking disaster. But I keep moving every month or so I haven't got like fixed line. So it just, it's a constant nightmare. So I apologize for that.
Oh, no worries. Mine has usually been a deal like that, but we just kind of got the Starlink. Like, we're out in the middle of nowhere out here, and I've been on...
oh, nice.
We've been building my own routers and using a 4G LTE, like a cellular network connection on multiple routers, and just creating our own network here. But we just got the Starlink. Like, we were only getting like 5 to 10 megabytes per second at our max. And we just got this Starlink internet thing, I would say, a couple weeks ago, and it's actually like... It's actually much quicker, but it does get interrupted by like things, I guess. Like, we have a lot of trees. We're out in the middle of nowhere. So like, I guess that's not super cool with it, but it's better than we had. So can't complain.
So you're building your own routers. What are you doing? PF Sense or one of those sort of things for privacy, or you just like tinkering with stuff like that?
No, well, yeah, it has some privacy applications because then you can actually see every device on your network and what they're doing. And I just love to have that kind of visibility into stuff. The routers that I was building were basically based off of like like routers are basically multiple parts. You have the router that kind of transmits the device, and then you have the modem that will capture the Wi-Fi signal. So I would basically just buy the components for that and then just basically assemble them myself. And the reason that I was doing this was because there wasn't really a good commercially available 4G LTE like router. There's something called Mophie, which is pretty good, but it was based on it's based on one specific type of architecture, and you could get a little better stuff if you do it yourself. So that was basically the whole motivation. It's just we're out in the middle of nowhere, so as much as I could optimize this stuff, the better. And for a while it was like, we were using something called HughesNet, which is a satellite internet provider, and they cap your data at 50 gigs per month. And we were just running through that like nothing. So those things were, and forget about running a Bitcoin node, like just the traffic of sending and receiving transactions and just from everybody else in the mempool, that alone just takes up so much bandwidth that I think like, I don't know, we would just blow through stuff all the time. So at some point I was like, I found out, people are using cellular SIM cards in routers to basically just trick the cell phone company into thinking it's a cell phone. And then you just use the unlimited data plans, and it actually powers the whole house internet. And I had no clue about this stuff, but it works. And we used that for years. And it was a really good solution as far as that goes.
Yeah, but the Tesla stuff seems to be, the Starlink seems to be really fucking good. I've spoken to a couple of people who have got it and they've been raving about it.
Comparatively, it's night and day. I mean, like I said, I was getting like a good 10 megabytes per second. If I was lucky, this thing easily is over 140, 150 most of the time when I check it. Sometimes it's like at 90, but sometimes it's at 250 or 300, which is like, you just would not even dream of that with the other thing. And it's a factor of where you are. Like if I was doing an LTE network very close to the city, my speeds would be significantly higher. But it's just, when you're stretching things, you just make do with what you can. And you're happy for that. Honestly, I'd rather be in a situation like this where I'm out kind of away from everybody and just connecting a little tiny bit slower to the world. It's like, your pace is slower. You're out here slower. It's like, okay, can go with this.
Yeah, definitely, especially with all the crazy shit going on. I think the last place you want to be is in the city. You want to be far away and have some time to prep and plan and not be in the madness. So I think a lot of people, especially Bitcoiners, are thinking that way. And actually, I was looking at a Starlink myself because me and my missus have been building or restoring and building a 1960s Airstream. We've been building it for like, if shit really kicks off, we'll just move. And we've got all our stuff in there and, ready to go.
Nice. That's awesome. Yeah, well, we started in a situation where we were in the city. We actually, I had actually lived in an apartment that I burned down one time. And then basically my girlfriend at the time, like after I got out of the hospital, I was there for like almost a whole month. I pretty much, the whole house burned down, but I also got burned. Like 30% of my body got burned off at like third degree burns and stuff. Yeah. I was in the hospital for like a month. And when they actually released me, I was like not really ready to go. Like I was like, my skin still wasn't really there. I didn't have a home because it got burned down. And my girlfriend at the time, who wasn't my girlfriend for super duper long, but maybe about a year or so at that time, year and a half. And I was like, well, hey, can I stay with you? And she was like, I don't know that we were ready to be at that position, that place in our life yet, but luckily that all worked out and we got married. And now it's like I couldn't imagine life without her and stuff. So it's like you just go through these moments where like everything in your life is destroyed and taken away, literally. Like not even your health, and it's like you pretty much bring something back from that state of nothingness. It's a big confidence builder, so I think there's a lot in life that I've been like intimidated by, but if you just keep kind of trucking on and just realize like, hey, that through action is the only way through this, and this stuff doesn't build itself. So also I think there's a bit of a drive to it. I don't think in many ways I like could have stopped making art all of a sudden. So even though I didn't have much, even like at her house on her little table, I would just like fill up the entire dinner table with art supplies and art stuff. And it was like, she had a 1-bedroom apartment. It just wasn't really ready for me there. So luckily we all grew together out of that place. And we ended up living like right downtown of Miami, which is like, I mean, when they have Ultra Music Festival, it's one of the biggest music festivals maybe in the world, but certainly in our country. And we were right outside of that where we could pretty much just parachute down from our balcony into the festival. And
nice.
It was really awesome for the time that we were there. But at some point, just every year, the rent kept raising. And, sometimes they would just say, well, hey, we're kicking you out of the apartment because we're coming back from France and now we want to live there. Or, hey, this or that happens. It was just so tenuous, like you didn't have a security of knowing that you were going to be there past the time of the lease. And some of the leases were even, like I said, like, hey, well, if we decided to come back from France, then y'all just got to figure it out. So it was like, we bounced around bounced around in the same building for a few years because we really loved it. And it just felt so insecure that at some point we said, look, we just need to settle out, find a home. And we started looking and we were just so picky. I'm picky with everything in life. And it took us over a year and a half. We just didn't find anything. And then our realtor was like, hey, I think I found a place you guys might like. And it was like an hour from where we were even looking to live. And so they bring us down there. We go look at it. And it's this like amazing log cabin on a really big property. I was like,
nice.
This is in our area? Like, I can't believe that. Like, it's just like, so we're like, all right, let's like, what's the deal on this place? This one actually looks workable. Like, it actually had space to do stuff. And they were like, well, here's the deal. the guy that owns it right now is a DEA agent, and he got called to Africa, and he's just has to sell the house right away. This is what they want. It was like above what we actually had. And I said, look, this is what we have. We can offer this and see how it goes. And the guy came back. He said, well, hey, it's close, but can you go up to this? And I said, look, I can't. Like, that's what I have. If you could take it, cool. And luckily, he was just like, all right, fuck it. I got to leave the country. And we got the house. And without this house, I wouldn't have been able to put in my own laser cutter in the shed. In fact, like, the house came with the shed out back. My brother-in-law came by. He called it the murder shed because it looked like it was falling apart. It was like full of spiders that would murder you, and like dust from like 10 years of who knows what. Like, the DEA guy hadn't gone in there and stuff. So it was like, I was just going to throw it out. But my buddies were like, no, man, this thing is awesome. You just put a little money and work into this, and we can turn this into like a workshop. And I looked at my friend and I was like, are you sure? Like, if you saw the shed, like, you would not believe it. and he came over like every day for a month and a half or something. He painted it with me. We took everything out. We put in drywall. We put in flooring. We put in AC, like lights. And like, he helped me turn that thing into a workshop. And soon enough, I had a laser cutter in there. And, this whole thing comes from that, so it's all just like one string of happenstances that brings us to where we are.
That's what life is, though, isn't it? We just sort of bounce through it, and we don't always know where we're going, but it tends to work itself out if you work hard. And having the space to be creative is such a massive thing.
Absolutely.
Doing it on the kitchen table. Funnily enough, I almost burnt down my house painting it was about 3 years ago. And I was doing the same. Like, I turned my whole living room into an art studio, and I was painting on this table in the middle of the room. And I was using alcohol inks and blowtorches, and I was high as fuck. It was my release. I was like, I just need a break from work. And so I just stay for the day and paint, get high, fuck around. And I was chucking all this alcohol ink on the painting. And then I stupidly just grabbed the blowtorch and was like adjusting some of the detail there, and the whole thing just went boom, like fucking up, hit the ceiling, smoke going everywhere. And I was an idiot. Like, I wasn't prepared, didn't have any fire hydrants or anything like that. And I was just like running back and forth with cups of water, just trying to put it out. And I cannot believe I didn't lose my house. So I was close, but yours sounds much more scary.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Well, the thing is that stuff gets away from you quickly. And with mine, it was basically like I had some oil in a pan in the kitchen, and like that caught fire. And I just was like, let me put this in the sink to put water on it, and that will put this out. But oil and water and fire, it doesn't do that. But when I moved the pan, and it wasn't a far move, it was like, a couple feet from the stove to the sink. In that move, some of the liquid with the fire actually spilled out on the counter or the floor or something.
Shit.
And when that happened, just the whole place just went up like so quick. It was crazy. Like it just kind of happened before I realized what was going on. And luckily I just, I got out somewhat in time, but it had already kind of like burned me a little. And at that point, I just called 911. They came, but there was like no saving any of that stuff. And even after the whole thing was over, it was like, and the thing is I had used to do like a lot of like blotter art. Like, I've done a lot of psychedelic artwork, so I had like whole collections of blotter art and all kinds of stuff. So like when the fire department came in, they like saw the blotter art and they thought it was like LSD lab, and like they were gonna actually arrest me and stuff at the hospital. And like my wife at the time was like, hey, no, look, like this is his website, like he, here you could see the art, this is just art stuff. And look, like I was pretty much unconscious while all this was going on, but like I would have woken up with like handcuffs to the hospital bed, like, on top of it for just my art, which I guess is a good story in a sense. But yeah, it was really crazy. I actually have like a DEA thing that they wrote up that said, we busted the first active LSD lab in South Florida. And it's like,
that's so funny.
Right, guys, sorry, but I guess art imitates life sometimes. So
I wonder if that was the same DEA agent that you nicked this house off. You got it cheap. He tried to fuck you over, and you're like, right, no, this is how life works. Is actually, I'm going to take your house for nothing.
I love it. That is very interesting turn of events, I suppose. No matter how you look at it.
That's cool. So the blotter art, is that something you still work with now, or like go back to, or is that kind of that's been and gone?
It's well, see, okay, it's a complex question because I feel like things always evolve and things are connected. And I actually like took some LSD the other day, and I was like kind of feeling like I don't want to be off mission in a sense. And my wife was like, "What's off mission for you?" Like, and I'm like, "Well, I basically like use the art as a vehicle to promote." Tools of self-sovereignty that are like wholesome and good for people, good for the planet, good for themselves. And I see like both Bitcoin and LSD as compatible, not only compatible, but I'm not sure what the word would be here. Symbiotic is not either. Complementary sovereign technologies that individuals can use to better themselves. So yeah, like I actually have, just like I have the Bitcoin mandala that basically goes through the Bitcoin ecosystem and the whole software and the coding and whatnot, and kind of breaks down each little thing and puts them in perspective. I also have an LSD mandala that does a similar thing with LSD. It basically has 4 rings. Each of the 4 rings is related to one of the 4 atoms in the LSD molecule. So you have carbon. There's 20 carbon. So there's 20 rings in the carbon ring. Hydrogens, nitrogens, oxygens. So each of those has a ring of stones that tell a story. There's actually the full synthesis of LSD in one of the rings. So if you follow the instructions in the center ring, then you come up with 31,000 doses of high quality LSD. So it's like, these things are something, and basically I get into this stuff in the sense that it's like, I feel mission driven. So while I haven't really done anything with the psychedelic art for the past few years, I think in 2017, I started with the Bitcoin art. And when I go into something, I kind of go all in the sense that it just captured my mind and my imagination. So I just have to go through all these different rabbit holes there. And I haven't really finished with Bitcoin in the sense, or LSD, I suppose. There's just so much depth in each one. So I think that there may be places to tell stories where maybe there's some connection that happens between the two. There's also like reimaginings of older work. I've done that in the past where I kind of take something that I drew 10 years ago and like redo it with whatever my current skill set is, and usually hopefully that's better. And so there's stuff that I've done in the past that I do feel like has possible expressions in the future, both in terms of sculpture and drawing. So I don't know, honestly, there's just so much that I want to do. I'm not sure that I actually have time to actualize it all, so I kind of have to also be ruthless in the sense of defining a path. So I have to say, okay, this is the mission here. This is the story that I'm telling, and then just stay true to that, and then not get distracted. And there's just so many distractions in the world that it's like, like sometimes I find myself like in a position that's like, should I take the time to like say, hey, I think X, Y, or Z, or should I, if that really doesn't relate to me in some way, or should I just forget about all that and just focus on what I'm doing? And the answer is obvious, but just sometimes you just see stuff and it it triggers you, and you're like, this seems dumb to me. So you say it. But, so whatever. I guess I'm a victim to that. So it's just, I think it's a search personally to limit distractions, stay on mission, and you use whatever ability that I have to tell stories through visual media, and just try to keep spreading the message that I feel is a benefit to the world, and also maybe something that lasts beyond me as well. So like, we only got a very limited time, and I may not make it till tomorrow. So what you have is what you've done. I don't know. Hopefully I'll leave something here that someone remembers.
Definitely. And I like that what you're focusing on is things that you think can actually make change, whether it's psychedelics or whether it's Bitcoin. It's things that can really change people's lives, enrich people's lives. And they're both things that have, I guess, from the general public, there's a very negative spin on both those things, even though the truth is out there and, we know that it can help a lot of people. That is the general view. And so having someone who's focusing their art and spreading this message through art is really important, because, it can light a fire in someone. You can sit and you can tell everyone for years about Bitcoin's the best money, it's got hard cap supply, you can tell them all that and they don't give a fuck. And then they see something like your work or the same as psychedelic stuff, and it can just capture their imagination, and they need to go down that rabbit hole themselves. I think certainly the people who I've managed to orange pill are people who have gone, oh, okay, you've triggered something, you sparked something, and then they go away and do a bit of research, and they're the only ones who stick around.
Right. Absolutely. Well, I think, by having a different medium to tell stories, it's only going to lend power to the message in that sense. Is you have some people that are very good orators, some people that can do different medium to, I guess, spread whatever message it is that they feel. But I once said that I think LSD and Bitcoin are two of the least understood yet most powerful technologies on the planet, and I think that that's just very true. And that's one of the things that I try to disambiguate in the art, is that our culture is telling us one thing about these, LSD is bad. It damages your chromosomes. It makes you crazy for life after you do 7 things. And, you're legally insane. And Bitcoin boils the oceans. It, going to make you lose all your money. It's going to use so much energy. We're going to have to give up on New Hampshire and stuff. And, we're being fed these stories that are actually just propaganda for mechanisms that actually the incentives aren't necessarily clear all the time in the messages that we're being given. So you kind of have to look deeper in a lot of this stuff, because the more you look at these tools like psychedelics or Bitcoin, the more you find that these are actually something that can benefit your life. Like you're almost being fed a line that leads you to destruction or leads you away from personal salvation. For one thing, like psychedelics have they've been doing this research where, mystical experiences that are brought about through psilocybin or other psychedelics, and comparing them to mystical experiences through religion and things like that. So I find psychedelics to be where you're getting a direct, unmediated, no counterparty risk experience of whatever you want to say the divine is, in quotes, or instead of having somebody tell you how it is or what their experience is, you actually get the opportunity to go out and have that experience for yourself and make your own determination based on that, instead of having to just be spoon-fed a watered-down version that doesn't even contain the Eucharist, in a sense. You know what I'm saying?
Answer this honestly. Am I a complete fucking pussy for being too scared to take LSD?
No. In fact, I think anybody who doesn't have a sense of fear when they take it probably isn't approaching it appropriately. Like, these things are, in those same studies that I was talking about, those people would say that psilocybin, a single dose of psilocybin, is among the 5 top most important things in their life, along with the death of a parent or the birth of a child or a wedding. And for some people, it was the most significant experience of their life. So if you don't have some sense of trepidation when going into an experience like that, you're not properly kind of focused, in a sense. And I don't think that not proper focus is a bad thing. Like I get annoyed by people that say things like, oh, I only take LSD for or psychedelics for spiritual reasons, or things like that, because I feel like that's a very elitist view, and it gives up on the fact that everybody gets what they need at the appropriate time. Like, I don't like to discount the fact that some guy could be at a frat party on a Saturday night and with a bunch of his buddies drinking beer, and somebody gives him a hit of acid, and he has an experience that opens him up, changes his life forever for the good. And, he wasn't planning on that. His set and setting weren't right, according to, some people, but he, that experience is still accessible just through sheer chance, So, you can't discount those and say, there's only this one way to do it. It's like, only my Bitcoin wallet is the right one to use. It's like, no.
Yeah.
There's opportunity, but proper preparation, there's something to be said for that. Like, it's, by properly preparing your set and your setting, like, okay, you're creating a safe space for yourself. You're not going to have these distractions. You don't have your phone where somebody's going to call you and say, oh, hey, I broke my leg. Can you come pick me up and take me to the hospital? Like, no, you can't have yourself exposed to those type of environments, or where you're walking around to the city and, or you're driving, God forbid, properly set up your setting. You also, the fact that we live in a world where you can't ascertain the quality of what you're getting to a very direct way, that's a huge impediment to many people. So, like, if you have a situation where it's legalized and you have a known amount of a known substance, that takes away a huge amount of fear about the process,
Yeah.
because a lot of people, they might get something that's really good, they take it and they get into a loop about, oh, maybe I took something that's not good and it's poison or something.
Yeah.
And they're tripping out, and it's like they're actually on the best stuff ever, but they don't know. Because so like all this stuff is a factor of prohibition. By making this stuff illegal, we actually limit people from having these safe experiences. You know, my kind of gist has always been that as society grows, like hopefully we'll create frameworks for working with these things. You know, like hopefully every university will have like a psychedelic crisis center, because really that's what it comes down to, is managing these, like the crisis situations, because usually those bad trips that people have are where the most personal growth comes from in some senses. It's just that we handle them very poorly. You don't want to take somebody in this very heightened state and put them into like a white hospital and then lock them down to a gurney and then put them in weird things and shove like IVs into them. That's actually not an appropriate solution in that situation. There's much better ways to handle that actually could lead to a lot of personal growth for that person, by actually addressing the situation that they're going through, putting them in a safe place where they're not going to hurt themselves, and letting these things play out in a safe and healthy manner. You're going to have a lot more growth, and you'll have something that actually the person can look back on and be like, yeah, that was scary as hell. But, you know, like there's that confidence building, just like I said, where you come from nothing and you build back your life. Like if you think of the psychedelic death and rebirth experience that a lot of people go through, you don't even have to have that ego death or death experience, but that sense of basically being torn apart, like basically torn apart at the atomic level, shown, you know, what the universe is, and basically being put back together in a sense, and then coming back out of that in itself is very confidence building, in the sense that, man, like I was nothing and now I'm something. And it's like, it's that, yeah. So I think you are probably appropriate to have trepidation, and there's nothing wrong with that. And yeah, just everybody has to take their own time. Just like, you know, like these things aren't for everybody. I say, you know, like people have to self-select. And one of the things I like is for people, you know, to the idea of growing mushrooms, because it takes a long time. So say you have like a month or 2 months where you're actually working with this, you know, what actually spores are basically just the potential for life. So it's like potential energy, and you're turning it into kinetic energy by basically like germinating the spores and letting the mycelia grow out, and then like actually like spawning that into substrates and letting that colonize and actually turn trash into treasure. You know, in essence, like these mushrooms, they grow on compost. They're like decaying matter and stuff, and you're basically like taking what was once life and is now decayed and turning it into like this alchemical potion. And just this time that you have to go through that process gives you time to think about it, and like you think about it a lot because you're actually interacting with it a lot, and you also are directly responsible for bringing it into the universe. So there's a connection with you and this substance, and you also take away the issue that I mentioned before about you don't really know the quality of what you're getting. Like, like I don't know if this LSD is good. Like if you grew the mushrooms yourself, you can identify them just from a picture on the internet. Like this is what this is. It does, you know, like you can say, it turns blue. It has the purple spore print. Like you can do self-identification and verify that what you have done is correct.
Which takes the stress out.
Yeah. So in terms of centralization, I feel like LSD is like a highly centralized thing. It is what it is, but mushrooms are very democratized and decentralized in the way that it's just, there's kind of no stopping the mycelial network.
That's true. Yeah, it's something. I mean, I listened to a talk from Paul Stamens on mushrooms, and I've done a lot of like talking to people who have found it to be really useful for all sorts of different issues. And like, I don't know if this makes sense, but I find like throughout my life, effectively, I've had different blocks. There are like a selection of those blocks where you change to a completely different person. Like the person who is in that time is no longer around at all. And the things that happened then sort of no longer go through my head too much. But at the same time, there are maybe some boxes that have been shut and forgotten just so that life can continue, just so that I can function. But they're still there. And I guess my thought is, you know, a lot of people say, oh, you can sort of fight these demons and you can break things down and then sort of let things go. And with me, my sort of fear is, well, what if I do open up those boxes using whichever substance, what if I open them and then I can't get a lid back on them? Or what if I open them and then all the work I've done over the last decade to become different to what I was, then what if that creates issues in my life today and then creates issues for my family? And so I guess that's where the fear is, where I'm like, I'm concerned that A, I see some really fucking dark shit that I don't want to see, and B, I maybe make things worse. And so I guess that's the fear. And then the hope side of it is like, well, actually, no, maybe I can confront a lot of things and maybe I can actually grow as a person. And even the box I'm in now, I'll look back on and go, okay, that was a former version of myself and actually I can become better again. So yeah, it's a constant loop of those thoughts, I suppose.
Duh, there's so much to unpack there. You hit on so many things, like first off, no one wants to take stuff and see super scary shit. That's like, that's like the main thing I think that people are concerned with is they don't want, it's the unknown. They don't want to, it's like, if, it's almost like taking a taxi, like once you're in there, it's like or almost a plane, I guess, like once you're in the airplane, you lose control. You're basically like, there's no going back now. Once you're in the air, you're there. You got to trust what happens. So that feeling of the unknown is something that a lot of people have to address. Now, some of the other things that you're asking, like, what if I see something and I haven't experienced that, instead of actually helping me grow as a person, what if that makes me actually devolve in some ways or become worse? And that's actually a super insightful point that I like to bring up, is that there's no magic bullet, in the sense that you can't just take LSD or psilocybin and become automatically a good person or a better person. You are just as subject to wrong think as anyone else. So I like to give examples to people, like in Bitcoin, there's like a lot of people that will fall victim to wrong think, in the sense that they see Bitcoin, they get excited about it, they know this is something really awesome, and then they think, man, it uses too much energy, we should switch to proof of stake, or like it's slow and expensive technology, like this other thing here is really awesome, so I should just go, in this instead of Bitcoin. So there's that wrong think there. So psychedelics have just as much wrong think that can happen. So, like there's whole weird new agey movements that happen, it's like where people like do, and I can't speak for the validity of a lot of this stuff. I have friends that are into like Reiki and crystals and stuff, and I actually love crystals for the geometry. I don't necessarily think they're going to heal you up. They may.
Yeah, they're beautiful.
But like there's a lot of wrong think that is just inherent in being a human. So there's nothing that's going to save you by going into it. Now, I think like the benefit of psychedelics is that it gives you a perspective shift. Like you're used to seeing the world as yourself. And this is basically something that takes you outside of yourself and lets you look at yourself, looking at the world in the way that you do. And then you can judge whether you think that that's productive for you, or whether maybe you have some blinders on that need to be removed. But I think like any tool, there's ways that you can use it properly, improperly, and you can also abuse it, as well. The thing about abusing psychedelics is they usually like don't take that abuse for too long. They'll usually hit you at some point back. So,
yeah.
All right, like I'm going to eat 50 hits this time, like, that may not go so well. So like, yeah, you have to like be within bounds, as well. So like every tool has its benefits and its dangers. So it's all about appropriate use. And the problem is, by having these things illegal, it's very hard to ascertain a procedure for what this proper use is, as well as what places these should be done in. And just there's no consensus around these things. So it makes it very willy-nilly and dangerous for people that just legitimately want to investigate something about themselves. There's no reason that we shouldn't have body sovereignty to determine what happens within the bounds of the skin, that you were given to exist on this planet. That's just obnoxious.
Especially with a tool that has the possibility of enriching people's lives. And that's the thing with Bitcoin and with psychedelics. There are some drugs, I think everything should be illegal. I don't believe in any laws or rules or anything, to be honest. But with certain drugs, I can understand. I'm like, crack's not that great for people, and it's like the opioids and stuff like that. It's not that great, and heroin and things, it can fuck people up. But, there are other drugs where I'm like, there are some serious benefits here. And when they're not available and what you're buying like you would with anything else, it creates so many issues. Like most of the time when people die here in the UK, it's because fuck's sake. Where are you with me now?
Yep, got you. Sorry.
Yeah. Where do we cut off?
It just literally went off for a half a second there.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was just going to say, like, here in the UK, most of the time there's a death. They think they're buying one thing and they get something completely fucking different, and then it causes issues.
Which is the factor we just talked about. The prohibition causes,
Yeah.
This misidentification, which is super dangerous and causes these deaths. And, and it's a good statement that I fully agree with you how, like, I agree that there should be all substances should be legal. Like, yeah, crack's like not really my thing and heroin's not my thing. But I don't think other people should be not allowed to make that choice necessarily. I think like advocating for LSD and psilocybin is very easy on this path because as far as substances go, they're actually safer than even aspirin. Maybe not quite as cannabis, but it's like they're so far on the safety platform. We have thousands of years of use of mushrooms and decades and almost 100 years of use of LSD over millions and millions and millions of people almost daily. So it's like you have a really good reference set of whether this stuff causes, issues for people or not, and, on a long time scale. So I like a lot of these things in terms of just determining safety and efficacy. But I think what it comes down to, like we said, is body sovereignty. It's really not my right to tell other people what they can or can't put into their bodies. Like they could be, mischievous with it as long as they don't harm anybody else. Then really, I don't feel like that violates, any of the, societal rules that we have. If it's just like, hey, it's like sucks for you, then hey, I think that you have the right to make that choice.
Yeah, absolutely. It's crazy that it's even considered that someone else can make a decision on someone else's body. It's fucking stupid.
Right, and that's amped up more than ever in the past couple of years to points we can't even imagine.
Yeah, I mean, we can laugh about it now, but fuck, it was
been a scary
dark. It was really fucking dark. Like around here, me and my missus were like the only two people who believed it was an obvious thing that people should have a choice over what goes in their body. Like we were really demonized and attacked, even by our own family and friends and everyone. And it was scary to see how quickly it happened. But it makes it very obvious why a lot of these substances are illegal, is because if you have a substance that can make people think a little bit differently, open up their minds slightly, make them question things possibly, and you're a government who has a certain agenda, you're not going to want that to survive. You're not going to want people to be using that because it's going to break the illusion of what you're trying to do. And it's the same with Bitcoin. It's the exact same thing. And that's why I think maybe there's this crossover, is that a lot of people that I speak to who are into Bitcoin either smoke weed or have other substances that they use, and they tend to be a lot more like the degree of openness in conversation is much greater than the average person. They're prepared to discuss things. They're prepared to think outside the box. They're prepared to question things so much that they go down that Bitcoin rabbit hole, and they're prepared to say, well, is everything that I thought that I knew about the world completely fucking wrong? And that's really hard. And I think that that's where a lot of this crossover comes.
Absolutely. And I think that a lot of that, like, again, there's a lot of crossover and tie between through these things, because that everything I've been told is wrong thing is one of those early psychedelic lessons that I feel like I got. Like, it's like, man, it's like, shit, everything that I learned my whole life, I feel like maybe that wasn't actually all that there is. Like maybe there's more here. And Bitcoin has that same thing where it basically opens you up to the fact that, I think it makes you start questioning things in the same way. Like there's a big crossover in the types of questions that you ask that are very fundamental to like what the experience is on this planet. Like what is time, for example, is something that comes up on psychedelics because your sense of time is either dilated for the most part. I think most people have like a dilation in the sense that it feels very long, like the amount of time between say an hour just feels like eternities, whereas you could also have it feel very short. And then in the same sense, I think I lost my train of thought there.
Yeah, the way that we perceive time, questioning the way we perceive time.
So obviously, and Bitcoin is like its own sense of a clock. It basically is its own clock, this global clock that the whole world is running, that it has its own sense of time, and each tick of the clock is a new block, and it's this immutable sense of time. And both of these things make you ask, like, what actually is this? What does this mean at different levels? And you start looking at it, and the what is money question is so deep, and psychedelics may bring you to that, I think, but Bitcoin more so. The what is money question is a really deep rabbit hole that it's just obfuscated from us, just from as basically, and it's been going on for so many decades that it's just ingrained now in the economics that they teach to us, and the way that we're taught about the world. They don't really tell you how money is created in this world and how fiat works, and that's all kind of not only swept under the rug, but actually they teach you a form of propaganda, the Keynesian economics, to kind of prop up the system on itself. So the way that they're teaching you is purposely deceptive about money. So these core questions about how we interact with the world and our fellow man, yeah, man, everything is it's all a lie. Like the way that we've been taught, this stuff is not actually as it is. But it's lies trapped in a sense of truth. So there's kernels of truth that are built, these weird scaffoldings of deceit around. And so you have a sense, and also I think there's a societal acceptance of things. You have people where they just, you just tell them 2 + 2 = 5 long enough, like eventually people will start to get it and just start parroting that. So I think that a lot of these stuff that now are prohibitive, like we have the sense of the current thing now, like whatever the current thing is that people are mad about. I think like drugs, in the past they had their version of this is the current thing, like it was propagated in a different medium, like we didn't have the internet, but through radio and newspaper and Time magazine, like these are the different vehicles that they would propagate the current thing, and whatever it is, people would get mad at, like McCarthyism, or nowadays it may not look so negatively on that, but like we have these different propagandas that we spread through our medias, and it's just now we have a sense of people just don't even trust like media. If you hear media, you almost understand it for what it is. It's like a mediation between you and reality. It's a third party in between you and reality that's basically spoon feeding you. It's the same thing I said about religion before. You have the priest telling you this is what divine experience is and this is what it looks like, but you don't actually get to experience that for yourself. It's reserved for this sect, only other people.
Yeah, it's weird, and it's almost like this manipulation from a very young age about, if you have to prop up a Ponzi, which is what our current financial system is, then you have to have people who are addicted to more. You have to have people who want all the things and they want them now, or they want them quicker than now, they want them yesterday, so then you have the credit, and to get people addicted to that lifestyle. And it was actually the thing that led me to Bitcoin, was that I had this idea in one of my previous selves, was that I have to fucking earn the money. I want this house, I want this car, I want this bike, and I'm not happy now, but I will be when I have this, and I want control over my life, and no one can fucking tell me anything when I have it. And then I worked like a complete dickhead and didn't enjoy life at all for pretty much a decade. And then I got to that point and I was like, here's the house, I'm in it, there's the car on the drive, there's the motorbike, this is the lifestyle, I've got these girls, I've got this, I've got whatever, and like everything that I imagined that I'd want, and I think very much was shaped by society and TV and everything that I was thinking about was like shaped that way. And then I got it, and then I was like, I'm deeply fucking unhappy. I fucking don't enjoy life at all. I don't want to be here anymore. That realization, I think, just completely threw me off. Like I was just like, whoa, what the fuck is life about? And then dropped everything and dropped work and was just like really depressed, really fucking lost. And then luckily found Bitcoin. And I think that was, I don't know if it was meant to be, I don't know what it was, but from someone who was like obsessed with money to then find, well, what is money? And then to find, everything you were taught was a lie and it doesn't make you happy. The only thing that makes you happy is to feel like you have some purpose and find love with, real connection with people. That's the only thing that makes you happy. So it's just a lie from birth. And it's really fucking annoying because you see so many people chasing it. And when they get to the end, they're not going to be happy ever.
I mean, that's the story that they sell us on every 8 minutes in between the programming that they're also feeding us, is that you want more, you want this, and you're not going to be happy until you get this. And in fact, your friends are going to look at you and they're going to think you're just not cool if you don't have this. So it's probably best if you just get 2 of them. And, so we're you know that like basically we're inundated with this type of stuff because advertising is become a science where they actually learn to figure out what kind of colors do certain things to your consciousness, what kind of sounds, like what kind of, how long do you put someone on a screen in this type of a position to make people look for another 2 seconds, and all this data keeps getting aggregated, and it gets even better and better as they start getting the ability to track your eyes as they move across different screens and stuff like that. So it's basically weaponized time theft, and that's kind of how I was saying before, that I'm trying to limit distractions, but it's just I'm a victim as much as anybody else, because it's just they're so expert at trying to harvest your time and focus at whatever they want it to be focused at, that it really takes a sense of willpower to extract yourself from that and say, no, like I'm carving out some space to do what I want to do now, and actually be what I want to be for a minute, instead of having this dictated to me from above, by fiat, by decree. This is what you want. So I think, yeah, I could definitely relate to that. And I think maybe like that's another reason I think for psychedelics, for me, I can't speak to other people, but that sense where you said you looked at you basically got to the point where you looked around and you had the realization that this isn't actually what I wanted. I feel like psychedelics help you do that at little mini intervals, so that maybe maybe you don't spend 10 years going in the wrong direction. Maybe you can kind of short circuit that. You can't always, because you can't see where that maybe leads to. You maybe have to actually attain those things that you didn't really need for happiness, and go through the fact that you didn't attain the happiness to get that realization. But sometimes you can actually go through these things in your head. Like I think I've been people and felt things that may have been outside of what normally I might have thought or experienced through these tools. And maybe that gives you a perspective shift that might help you set your personal barometer in a way that may help benefit you. So I think like not only using psychedelics, but using them regularly in a kind of like an organized fashion, not organized, and basically like a regimented pattern where, because people go through these experiences and there's levels of, I consider advanced use to be using these tools to gain some kind of benefit, and then actually integrating that insight into your life and obtaining the benefit. Don't just have an insight about how it can benefit you, but actually integrate this into your life. And that's like a huge challenge for a lot of people, is they'll take a psychedelic, have a huge vision, be ready to change the world, and then they'll forget it the next day, and like they don't actually know how to take any action on it. And I think that's fine as an inexperienced user, but I think as you develop familiarity with this stuff and like a sense of adeptness, then you can actually start to utilize these things in a way that maybe inexperienced people are not able to do, and then you can actually start to leverage them in a way that you can really benefit yourself. But even people that are doing good with it, sometimes you get that benefit and you go back into life, and you just, like I said, you get sucked into these distractions and just what it is to be every day, and you fall back into negative patterns. So by going back into these spaces over time, it helps you to recalibrate. It's just like with Bitcoin, if like you set up your Bitcoin node and then you like use it one time to send a transaction, and you just like never use it again, like like you kind of forget how to do it. You might get nervous next time you go to send a transaction, like, oh damn, it's like once I hit send, like it's never coming back to me. What if I do it wrong? Like by using it a lot and getting a familiarity with how the system works, like you can maybe have a beer or two and actually write your own transaction by scratch on Notepad, and then just send it, and not be like too tripping out about it. It's like you feel comfortable that this is going to do what you want it to do, and in fact, like if it doesn't, you're probably going to get an error.
yeah.
And errors give a code and tell you what you did wrong. You just got to figure it out and do it right. Do it again, do it right.
The other thing with that as well is like, you were saying if someone has an experience and then they think, oh yeah, I'm going to make these changes, and they never do. I do think that with Bitcoin, anyone who goes deep enough and who holds for long enough and starts to understand it properly, they do have this shift in the way they experience time. And they also, as long as you've been around for long enough and you hold for long enough and you don't have paper hands, then it allows you the time to think. Because like, I know that throughout my life, I've had certain times, not using any substances, but just times where I've gone, fuck, I need to make this change, or I need to do this, or I need to stop doing this. And then you go back into work and it's like, right, I'm up at 6 a.m. I'm doing a 14-hour day, and your phone doesn't stop and you're busy. And then it's like, where, when, how, where am I going to find the time to think about this properly or to actually integrate this into my life? Whereas, with Bitcoin, it should over time give you more time. It should over time give you the ability to think, well, I think I should integrate this into my life. I'm going to try it. And that's really cool to see, because without it, you're constantly on this treadmill and the speed's just going up a little bit every year. It's just every year is getting a bit fucking harder to live. It's the opposite with Bitcoin, which is pretty awesome, because you do see these changes happening in people. And generally, I see Bitcoiners that I know and love doing better in life. Their diet gets a bit better. They generally become, I think, kinder and have a bit more empathy for people, like other than shitcoiners and the fiat fucks. But it seems to have a positive influence on their life, which is cool.
I think you just hit on a really cool correlation that I didn't catch before, but you actually said the same thing as I did with the psychedelics and put it into a Bitcoin perspective, because I was saying that newbie users, they take it and they have trouble integrating the stuff into their system, but advanced users are able to do that. And you just said that the people that stay in Bitcoin longer are able to, they do this advanced use and they integrate it into their lives. They become healthier. They have better relationships with the people around them, that, they feel stronger and they just seem to be having a better life. And they become more inquisitive, and kind of how I was saying, like with the psychedelics, you have to kind of keep going back into the space to get the most benefits. Well, almost like you're saying, like you have to keep kind of consuming the Bitcoin content, or like listening to podcasts, or reading whatever interests you about Bitcoin, or sending the transactions, or getting into the code, whatever it is that interests you about Bitcoin. You have to kind of keep doing that, and it's through doing it that you get this benefit to your life. Your passion becomes like a building block for your whole existence, in a sense. Like you're able to focus your passion, and it bleeds into the rest of your life. Like, why do Bitcoiners get interested in like what they're eating so much? Why is there so much emphasis on like different food types and like different exercise regimens, or maybe like self-sovereignty tools like guns, or like these other things? Like, why are people interested in all these different things when Bitcoin is not really like, it's like a monetary thing? Like, how does it bleed out into all these other facets of life, and why does it give people these like first principle outlooks? But the thing is it doesn't happen for everybody. So you have this core group of people that are advanced users, and they're kind of getting the benefits of what goes on. And then you have people that get into it and they get confused by wrong think in some way. So they get spun off into the shitcoinery, or they believe BSV is actual Bitcoin, or they believe, you know what I'm saying? Like they fall victim to these false narratives. And
they're definitely doing crack though, not psychedelics.
you pay for those mistakes. You pay for those mistakes with your time, your energy, your life force, your finances. So you have to kind of you have to have a deep sense of skepticism and ruthlessness in reality, and just say like, does this pass the acid test? And what I'm looking at, like, is like, you have to don't trust, you have to verify, like these first principles thinking of Bitcoin, with everything in your life, you should be doing that. And I think that's one of those lessons of Bitcoin, is be a little skeptical. Like, hey, people can tell you X, Y, Z, but just, you can't believe that. You have to verify.
Yeah, it's true. And the other thing that I noticed you said at the beginning, you were saying about like, basically when we're gone, what do you leave behind? Is it your art? Is it your message? Do you affect the world in some way? And hopefully it's positive. With your art and with what you're doing, the messages you're putting across, what do you think, like, if we go further into the future, when we're not here anymore, let's say like, 100 years from now, do you ever sit and think, this little group of fucking weirdos who are the advanced users of Bitcoin and who are lurking on Bitcoin Twitter and, fucking around with it and trying to push it forward and evangelizing it, like, what do you think we achieve, if anything, and where do you think this goes? Like, what are the implications for our children and grandchildren?
I mean, to me, I believe we're basically seeding the whole future of, what humanity is going to be in the future. I think like what we're doing now is one of those revolutionary moments where maybe we take back, money from the government with our sly roundabout way. And maybe this empowers people like all across the globe in some major way that actually unifies us as people, and not like entities of a government. You know, we're not like little pawns inside some other big system. We're actually each peers. So, I mean, I tend to be overly optimistic, I think, when it comes to Bitcoin, because I like the amount of research that I've done and looking into Bitcoin has just reinforced a feeling of confidence with me in terms of what Bitcoin is and what it means for humanity in the future. So I just feel that that's one of these things that is going to be here for many centuries. So while I hope my art will last anywhere as long as Bitcoin, I don't think that that's possible, but I hope it sticks around for a while. I spent many years on Grateful Dead tour, just selling my art in like parking lots all over the world for just little, keep me on the road basically to get from this show to the next show. And even that just felt so amazing because I would run into people all across the world and then maybe like wearing a piece of jewelry that I made, or, like had a piece of my art in their home. It was very deep connection that you have that creates this like little global web that, is people that are somehow like-minded and also support your vision. I just very rewarding, and it also like it just creates this deep sense of community for me. So I enjoy that. I hope I get to stick around a long time to enjoy more.
Yeah, well, that community is incredible. Like, talking from personal experience, I've never had like a closeness with people like I have with Bitcoiners. Like, it is very, very different. People who have become really close friends now, they're effectively their family. I've not really had that where I know, like, if shit really hits the fan, I can make a phone call and someone will be there and they will help me, and vice versa. Blood makes you relatives and loyalty makes you family. And there's definitely seems to be a loyalty here. I don't know whether it's because we're on a common mission. I don't know whether it's because there's an element of trust, even though this is like a trustless system. I don't know quite. I can't put my finger on it, but there's like a brotherhood here where people are just prepared to go to the end of the earth for each other. And I think that's where you get shit done. That's part of the reason where, yes, obviously Bitcoin is technically brilliant and, it's the best form of money and all these things. But if you didn't have that brotherhood, fuck all would get done, because, you have to have people on the front line who are, many of us, literally prepared to die for this thing, because if we don't win, we know what happens. Like the fucking creepy weirdos who wanted to inject us with DNA therapy and all this stuff, like, they're the people who control the world without this thing. And so, yeah, it's why I think, especially the art is so important. It's why 21ism formed in the first place, was like, we want to get this message out in every way possible. And it doesn't just have to be nerdy articles or like podcasts or stuff like that. Like, it can actually just be someone sees something and a picture paints 1,000 words and it can really pull them into this community. And I think once you're here, especially freedom loving people, you don't leave. You don't want to leave ever.
I think there's a good filtering mechanism that if you realize you've run into a stranger, but they're Bitcoin only stranger, that they've gone through some trials and tribulations to get to this Bitcoin only mindset. And there is a brotherhood or sisterhood that is formed at those levels of just, okay, this person has somehow like come to this decision that whatever else is out there, they're just, Bitcoin only. Like, that is a filtering mechanism. And I definitely see that you're able to jump into conversation with those people quicker because it filters out like a certain level of small talk bullshit that you don't have to go through with them to actually connect on a deeper level. And they probably would like to connect at a deeper level. You still have to trust, and I'm still have to don't trust and verify with each one of these individuals. Like, and there's a, Samson Mao said it. I had never heard this term before, but he called it orange washing, where like shitcoiners will pretend to be Bitcoin, orange wash themselves as Bitcoiners.
Yeah,
damn, I never heard of that attack, but that's like so genius. So yeah, like there could be like imposters out there, but it's at least one high filtering level where you've gotten past a certain level of bullshit that you can maybe connect with this person. And it does lead to these deeper connections that people where they're maybe once strangers kind of move relatively quickly into a place where you feel some sense of common ground. And I think that's a huge benefit. And I think, like you were saying, like using different mediums, like I'm really happy that people like the stuff that I do as far as like the art, because for me it's like I just kind of have to do it anyways. You know, like I'm just gonna make what I want to make, because someone once said to me, like, if you don't see something in the world that you think should be there, then it's your responsibility to make it. So that's basically what I spend my time doing, is just making the stuff that I feel should be in the world that it's not here, like something that I would want. So it's always gratifying when other people kind of feel some sense of connection to what you're doing, because in a sense it's like just basically like a peek into somebody's unconscious. And really, like, things like this are kind of interesting where we're just talking. Like, I don't usually think of anyone as being interested in anything I have to say, and in fact, like, I never put pictures of me on the internet or any kind of like I try to hide as far back as I can from the art. Like, I just let the art do what it needs to do, because that's actually what I think people should be interested, or hope that they'd be interested in. I feel like the art has my message distilled into a way that's cohesive and a way that I'd like to present it. And it probably speaks better than I would anyway. So I just try to, like, you know, be as quiet as I can. So I think these are interesting opportunities for me to kind of break outside of that shell. Because I don't usually go there. It's usually like what people get to see is, well, I do, I guess, make snarky comments on Twitter a lot, but other than that, like, let the art speak for itself.
Yeah, well, you know, like I said to you at the beginning, I really fucking love your work. I think it's got a special quality to it. It does tell a story. It's just got so much detail. And, you know, you're saying, oh, I don't know if the art is going to stand the test of time with Bitcoin. I think specifically your work, it will be there because you're creating, I don't know if you would call it a sculpture, but to me, that's what I feel it is like that explains and tells the story of Bitcoin in such a clear, like, you can just look at that and go like, whoa, what the fuck is this? And to me, it's also like this idea of, you know, saying about time. It tells the story of, like, Bitcoin has its own version of time, like it's block time, and it's like kind of what we sort of run on basically now. And you can look at it and it's like, it actually looks like a clock as well. And so there's something beautiful for me with that. It's like, I'm looking at this clock, but it's not the clock of the old fiat world. It's not the clock of those fucking lunatics. It's the new clock. It's the new world. And it's just got this special quality. So, I really do think it's going to stand the test of time. And I can't wait to see the new things that you're coming up with. And yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you, mate. I know we haven't really gone that much into the Bitcoin stuff or gone that deeply into the work, but I think most people who are going to listen to this would have seen your work already. And yeah, it was really nice to just get to know you a little bit.
Yeah, man. Thanks very much. I definitely appreciate it. And I mean, I think I certainly hope that, you know, very, very like deeply meaningful to hear something like that, you know, I certainly hope things would last, because obviously Bitcoin, I feel, is going to be something that lasts here for us. And really the stuff that I do, specifically the Bitcoin sculpture that, you know, pretty much we're talking about here, like, that is, it's me in some sense, but it's really, it's everything that everybody in the community has put into Bitcoin thus far. So, like, everything that's in the sculpture for the most part isn't something that comes from me, you know, like the time scales and the calendar nature that comes from Satoshi, you know, the Merkle tree layer that kind of goes through all the different pillars of Bitcoin and why the different things are important. Each one of those is because someone took the time to sit there and go out and explain what this is, why it's important, why you should care about this. So I was able to take those things that I actually went and did, those people resonated with me, and bring this into my heart and actually turn it into some vision that I have, and then put it back into the world so someone else can kind of get the same thing. So really what I'm just doing is taking what's already out there in the community and putting my own little spin on it and putting it right back into the community. So what's there is really not very much me. It's almost entirely you know?
Yeah, that's very cool. I know you said you don't talk about what you're working on currently, but can you tell me, is there anything that particularly is interesting you at the moment, like outside of the art? Is there something that you like particularly have focus on within Bitcoin at the moment, like Lightning or privacy stuff? Or it seems like you're a private guy. Like, what are your thoughts around stuff like that?
Outside of art? Something's going on outside of art? I don't know if I know any of that. I mean, isn't life art? So yeah, no, and it's not that I don't talk about like what I'm interested in. It's more a lot of times, yeah. If I'm in the middle of working on a project that I'm just not sure I'm actually going to be able to pull off, I'm hesitant to share that because it creates expectations that I'm worried I won't be able to achieve. But yeah, right now I don't know where we cut off before. But I was starting to talk about the different full node sculptures that I had made and the different materials and getting them over time kind of changed. Were you on the call for any of that? Or was I talking to myself?
No,
Really?
I think you were talking to yourself.
All right. Well, we'll try to jump into that again because it's
Yeah.
like, yeah. Okay. So, yeah. Okay. So, with the different full node sculptures, it's a series of 10. Each one of them is kind of unique in its own way in the sense that numbers 1 through 3 were based on the original design that I did. And then I kind of got bored with that and said, oh, I want to do something more and better. So I totally redesigned a whole bunch of it before I produced number 4. And then from that, I kind of been iterating off of that design from number 4 through these last 6 or 7 of the sculptures. But just the process that I've gone through, each one of them has been its own huge challenge. Like with each one, I kind of tried to go a little above my skill level. So for the very first one, the way that I was able to get the wood was much easier. But as the pandemic went on, it just became harder and harder to get any kind of material. So at first I was able to just go to local lumber yards and get wood. Then that became hard to find stuff. And I had to start going to like yacht building yards and actually finding like nicer woods to get anything at all. And then even those places stopped having anything nice. Like at some point, I don't know, I'd say middle of last year, I would go in and they just have like really crappy wood that just, you didn't even want to use as the base to make any art with. So it was like, man, this is just really crazy. So I had to learn how to like finish the woods and do all kinds of like staining and finishing. And I had never really gotten into any of that before. So each time I was doing it, it was like a little outside my comfort level. And then when they had the big Bitcoin conference 2021, I decided, I was like, I want to do something dramatic. So the other ones I've done in wood, I was like, let me see if I can make one entirely out of mirrors. So it took me like months to just figure out how to actually work with the mirror and make it do what I wanted to do in essence. And it
The least technically competent and professional podcast in the world. Sorry, mate. I lost you just at the point where you were saying that you couldn't find the same quality of wood and you were learning about staining and finishing it, and then you were moving on to use other materials, and then just bang, gone.
Yeah, I was like, this is hilarious because we went through the like whole, obviously at the beginning I dropped out at that thing, and then right as I get into that, I don't think the internet wants to. The secret government doesn't want the internet to know about this shit, but so like no, I'll jump back into it because my point was basically that I build my skills by going outside my comfort level. Like if I just do the same stuff over and over, like, okay, you had some success. People seem to like the number 1 sculpture that you did. Like I could just keep copying that and get away with that. And that may be okay for some people. But to me, I think I like the sense of risk. Like you might fuck this up horribly to the point that you can't even, like, you got to throw the whole thing out basically. So, because within those risks, you have the opportunity that maybe you'll reach some level of greatness. Like, and maybe sometimes you don't like fully get every single thing that you thought, but by reaching higher than what you are normally able to get, I think like that's where I'm able to kind of keep that sense of vibrance and interest for myself in the projects, as well as like having that bleed out to the rest of the world. Like I think people become interested in it because like I'm still interested in it in a sense. Like I each one is like it's my baby, in each sense. Like like everything that I have, like everything in my whole world is kind of focused in on this one art piece, and there is nothing else. Like to me, that is what I'm doing, and that's what I'm focused on. And I'm hoping that by the time I'm finished, that this is going to reflect that. And if it doesn't, then I'm literally going to just throw this whole thing out. So it's like, by taking those risks, I think it gives you that opportunity for taking advantage. So as the project started with the very first one that I did, it was something that I had never done before. I had done a few multi-layered woodcut pieces before, but I hadn't done anything this ambitious. It was like the first thing that was like 20 layers, and it was really like way above what I probably had done up to that time. But I learned a lot in doing it. That was like, like I can do this better. Like there's a lot of room for improvement. So after making the first couple of them, I was able to totally redesign it in a way that it made it easier for me to tell the story that I wanted to tell in a way that was more effective and also easier to put together. For example, like the very first ones, I used a lot of circles, and circles are very beautiful, but the problem with them is that there's just nowhere on there that you could tell this is the beginning and this is the end. So by creating little shapes within the circle, you kind of create markers, because with my stuff, if you have it mispositioned by even a millimeter, it's just not going to work. So I have to have things super precise. So I learned that I needed to put little markers in there that made it easier for me to make sure that each layer was exactly where I wanted it to be, because I actually had things that I did throw out because I put it together and I noticed, oh, this is actually either totally wrong or it's wrong by a few millimeters. And so, yeah, those pieces I just put in my fire pile and, hey, send these back to where they came from, and you got to try again. And so each one, as I was going, like, the very first one, I just pretty much took the wood that I got from the lumber yard and I did some sanding on it, but I didn't really know much about how to like properly treat wood. But as I was doing more and more with the wood, I had to educate myself more. So I learned about sealing wood and making my own like finishes and actually getting better quality woods and how to work with them. But at the same time as I was learning this, things started to become much more difficult to obtain, with the pandemic and whatnot. So I was finding that I couldn't go to the same places and still get the same types of wood. I live in a pretty big, or not in, but near a pretty big metropolitan area. So we do have some really cool wood shops there. And I was finding some really nice stuff at the beginning of this project, late 2019, early 2020. But as I was going to those same stores as the pandemic drove on, like first of all, they just stopped having any variety at all. And then the stuff that they did had was just a very low quality. And I just kind of got into a position where I just wasn't sure what to do. I still wanted to make cool stuff, but I didn't want to make, what I wanted to last hundreds of years with materials that just I wasn't feeling good about. So I started looking into, what else can I do besides wood? And I had done some mirror cuts previously and some older art that I had done. So I thought, it would be cool to do like this whole thing in mirror. But the mirror stuff that I had done in the past, the engravings on the mirror, they didn't show very well. So I wanted to do something that would actually make them super visible on the mirror. And that turned out to be really tricky. So I had to actually change the entire way that the design was created, because the way that the laser read it, in the way that I've always done all my previous designs, changed, because it has two ways that it does stuff. One is just basically called a cut, where basically the laser just traces the path and it just goes along the path of whatever your design is. It's very fast. And then there's a second option where it calls scanning, where it just kind of goes back and forth. And the scanning is super slow, so I just never used it, because I just thought that it just takes like 20 times as long to do the designs as the other way. And a lot of times it's not even as nice. But with the mirror, it turned out it did it super duper nice. And that was actually the way that I was able to get the engravings to look good. And then I had to paint them in a way that was going to work. And so finding out what kind of paint worked with the mirror was crazy, because some kind of paints actually would go in and like destroy the mirror. I guess it's made out of certain things, and certain inks are just totally incompatible. So I like tried 20 different blacks, and I've got all these different things I'm testing out, and different methods. It took me months to figure out how to do this thing in mirror, but by the time I figured it out, it was actually like a week up until the Bitcoin conference, which was July 2021. I know I had a week left, but since I had already developed like the skill set and done months of testing, in that week I was able to just, do nothing else and actually finish the sculpture in time to bring it to the event. And I was like, okay, I want this to be very dramatic. So the mirror thing was definitely crazy. Once I actually put it together, I had never actually like done this before, but my own art, I bought like white jewelry gloves, so that like scratch resistant gloves, so that I wouldn't mess up the thing that I was working on. I got like nervous because it was too nice, like I'm gonna mess this thing up. I can't even be working on this thing. And yeah, like it was just crazy. Like when we put it on auction and sold it, like it was a Saturday night, and the Bitcoin conference was amazing. Like everybody's like super high vibes. They're like, yo, let's go out, let's go drink, let's go party, let's do this and that. And it's like, y'all are crazy. Like I have this sculpture here that's not even mine anymore. I have to get this home. I need a Brinks truck or something. So it was just like really intimidating to think about. I have to drive this thing home and it's not even mine anymore. So luckily I got home safe, got that thing shipped out. But that kind of started me on a new path, because I was like, wow, this mirror thing was really neat. Like now, like what can I do next? So then I found out that you could do color. You could get colored mirrors. So then I basically started playing around with different color mirrors and seeing how they look when you layer it. So I did another month or so of testing with these different colors. I actually have some pictures on my Twitter. I had done these designs, this little fuck your shit coin key thing, and people really liked it, and it turned into the Bitcoin Infinity keys. But that was actually just from me testing to see how the different colors of mirror look. Because I could have just cut a little square and stuck them together and see how it looked, but I wanted to actually have a design in it. So I just made the little Bitcoin thing with the fuck your shit coin design as just a throwaway thing. I didn't really think about it, and then just use that to make about 20 different sets of color combinations. And by doing that, I was able to, because not everything looks good, some flow together, some don't. And the guy that actually bought number 8 at the conference, at the Bitcoin conference, they announced the El Salvador legal tender thing. So that was just around the same week that I was going to start his sculpture. And he was like, oh, hey, I guess somebody had put a message in one of the Bitcoin blocks right after that announcement. So we actually put that into his sculpture. So then I was able to use some of the El Salvador colors in the sculpture that he wanted, like blue, gold, and silver. And so that one came up really cool as far as the colored mirror. But then I was in the position again of like, hey, what can I do next? So the next one, I started actually trying to hand make some of the materials. So I did a whole bunch of different handmade materials to do in the sculpture. I had done some color shift materials. Like, have you ever seen those cars where they drive by and the color shifts?
Yeah, like flip paint.
Yeah, so I had done some of those. I had done a bunch of different mirror reflective colors, a whole bunch of what I ended up doing that the guy liked was a rainbow holographic layer that was kind of black, but depending on the sunlight, it would create these really cool rainbow holograms. So at that point, I'm kind of like custom making my own materials to put in the sculpture. So it's like at each step, it's like, what else can I do to make this absolutely as hard as possible on myself and put yourself into like a dimension where you just don't know if you can actually do any of this and how's this going to work, and is it going to be okay? But that's the only. I was really like, today at this point, like number 9, that one that I did, that was probably the most experimental I've ever done. That was probably the one that I'm most happy with as of now, just because it looks the coolest. But honestly, anytime I see one of them, the guy that owns number 6, Eric, he had lent it to me to display at this year's Bitcoin conference. And the thing is I make them, and as soon as I make them, I pretty much box them and ship them out. So I don't get a lot of time to sit with them to see how they look. So when he gave me number 6 back so I could display it like at the conference, which was because I was supposed to have number 10 done, which is part of this story, but I like just couldn't finish it in time because I'm so slow with this stuff. I'm like, again, working way outside of my depth here. And so I was hoping to show number 10 at the conference, didn't finish it, begged Eric if he would please let me take his sculpture off the wall and bring it to the convention center. And luckily he was like, yeah, cool. And man, when I saw number 6, it was like, dude, this thing is really amazing. So I think when you like just being in front of it in person, it's like it's really a lot different than seeing it online or in pictures. Because I got a whole bunch of pictures and I try to take good pictures of it, but I don't think the pictures that I take actually are cool. Yeah, as it actually like feels to stand in front of some of these things. So I think like that's really cool. So now I'm working on number 10, and it basically got to the point where I'm really not able to get hardly any wood at, I guess let me back up a second. So when I posted the video of number 9, I had been talking with the guy that bought number 10 already in messages. But then when he saw that, he was like, okay, cool. Yeah, I want to get number 10. And I was like, all right, well, like, do you want me to do it in wood or in mirror? Because, I could do it in either. I can even mix it if you want some of both. Like, kind of what do you want? And he's like, well, I want silver mirror. And I was like, oh, cool. That's going to be easy. Like, I already did the silver mirror. I know how to do this. I'm going to bust this out. It's going to be really quick and easy. And I'm not going to stress myself out like I always do on these things. Like, this is great. So I was like, yeah, I'll be done like January 15th, of 2022. I was like, I'll be done January 15th. It should be. I think I told him I'd start January 15th and I'd be done by April. And so I basically, and then he tells me, hey, you know what? Instead of mirror, can you do wood? And I was like, yeah, of course. Like kind of whatever you want, I'll do. And so he's like, yeah, wood. I'm like, okay, all right. So now if I'm going to go back to wood, I have to do something like that's super awesome. Like this is the last one, number 10. And it actually felt a lot cooler because going back to doing it in silver mirror, like I already did that. Like I don't like to go back to doing the same things. I like the challenge of it. So by going back to wood, it kind of brought a whole new sense of challenge because it's like, okay, now you have to do wood in a new way that's like really amazing because this is the last one. You're never going to make another one. So it all comes down to this. So the whole journey has been really amazing. So just to actually get the wood has been crazy. Like it became impossible to get it at the local lumber yard. So I started looking into like what else is possible. And I found these places where they make architectural wood panels. And this is like if you go into like a lawyer's office or a yacht club or a fancy restaurant and they have wood on display there, this is the place where they actually make those things. So I actually found like a wood manufacturer in my area and actually a couple of them, and went into them and actually like talked to the guys. They brought me around the factory and showed me how they make it and actually let me pick out all the different types of wood species that you could never even imagine or never get at any kind of like lumber yard. These places have everything, they'll kind of make it there for you to order. You can't just buy it off the shelf. It takes them a little while to make it, which it is what it is. But this gave me access to work with woods that I've just never even had access to before. So when I got just the bare woods, it was like, whoa, this is amazing. I've like never seen wood this pretty before, and I haven't even done anything to it yet. So like I put it on the laser, I'm getting ready to cut it, and I realized like the stuff is like so good quality that it's a little thicker than my laser can cut. And I was like, damn, like I don't know what I'm going to do here now. So I had to go back to them and say like, hey, like this is really super good quality, like wood, but do you have one that's like a tiny bit thinner? And they were like, no, this is all we got. So I was like, fuck. I was like, all right, well, so then I had to go to the second place that I found. And luckily they had just the exact thickness that I needed. And the kind that I've kind of been used to using, and they even had like cooler stuff and gave me a better price. And that place, he also accepted Bitcoin, so it was kind of like meant to be, but it did put my production back by several weeks because I had to wait like almost a month for them to make the first ones that I couldn't use, and now I had to wait like another 3 weeks or so for this next place to make it. And now, okay, so now I have all this amazing wood, and like bring it home, and it's like I need to start figuring out like what to do with this stuff. So what I was doing with the other woods was I would seal it and then I would laser cut the sealed wood. And the benefit of doing the sealing first is that the laser and wood, it creates like smoke and soot patterns that go onto the wood. And by sealing it first, I can actually just wipe it off and it looks clean and beautiful. If I don't do that, it's like a mess. But apparently not every sealer is laser friendly. So like the one that I was using in the past, I didn't like exactly write down the name of it. So I had to go to like all the stores around me, buy every single kind of clear coat that they have, paint it on, test it, see which ones work, which ones didn't. Basically none of them worked. I had to like go back into my old emails and try to find like information on what I was doing. Finally I found the brand. I went and bought it. That one worked. I was like, fuck, thank God. Now I need to like write this shit down. Now I know what it is. But so like took me all this time to find that. Now I have the clear coat, and I spent a whole bunch of time learning how to basically make the wood look like a mirror by doing like really high gloss clear coats with like polishing and buffing and all this stuff. And it turned out it takes me like a couple days basically to get each piece of wood ready, where before I would just buy the wood from the lumberyard, bring it home, throw it on the laser and start cutting in 5 minutes. Now I'm like, even once I have the wood, I'm still like almost a week or two away from, painting it, having it ready to go onto the laser. And I kind of thought like at that point I'd be done. Like once I laser cut it and I have already polished it and made it look super crazy, shiny, that I'm going to be happy with it. But I was like, I feel like this could use something a little better here. So now, like the past 2 or 3 weeks, I have all the pieces cut for number 10, and I also have a whole bunch of pieces that I cut that were like little errors, like little shit that goes wrong. As I said, I throw all those out. So these I'm using for test pieces, and I got the same kind of clear coat that they put on like Lamborghinis, and I've been
like ceramic or something, or
it's basically like an automotive clear coat. I think it's a urethane is actually like what material it is, and it's like a really super clear, high gloss clear that it just has a really nice like stay. Like I kind of put it in. Anyways, it's a fancy clear coat that basically when I put it on top of the laser cut wood, what it does is it kind of flows and it creates like little bumps and ridges that go into the laser cut grooves of the wood. So it follows all the patterns and it creates this really amazing play of light. And one of my sculpture teachers many years ago taught me that sculpture is in essence like you're playing with light, like 3-dimensional, like the way that the light plays off the different surfaces is what catches people's eyes and what makes them look at things in essence. And this whole thing basically, all the really fine details that are laser cut into the wood, each one of them has these really beautiful, clear, like hills and valleys that just hug them in these really sexy ways. And I'm just super happy with it. I just saw the first piece like two days ago, and I'm really happy with how it came out. Like, yeah, it took me like 4 months longer than I thought it was, but I kind of don't care in the end because really the end result is all that matters. So I don't mind taking a little extra time and testing stuff out and failing. Like, yeah, I failed a lot of stuff. I didn't like have the right clear coats for a little while, but eventually you get it. So I'm very optimistic. We'll see how this one comes out. I don't want to jinx nothing, but I'm like 90% there now, and I feel like we're getting really close. So yeah, I'm really excited to share some pictures of this when it's done. I always like underestimate the time when I think it'll be done. I thought I was supposed to be done again by the end of this month, but we'll see.
I can't wait to see the pictures. I know from fucking around with resins and different things like that it's usually particularly difficult to photograph anything where light reflects and moves, and you see these kind of patterns. You never quite can get it with a photo, but nonetheless, I really look forward to seeing it.
Yeah. I always have to deal with the fact that the photos are subpar to the actual real life experience, but I'll do my best.
Awesome. Well, listen, mate, thanks for coming on the show and for putting out such beautiful art. It's been really cool chatting to you. And yeah, as I say, I can't wait to see the new piece as it comes out. And you're welcome on the show anytime to shoot the shit. I've really, really enjoyed it.
Well, fuck yeah, man. Thanks so much for having me. I had a great time and definitely looking forward to doing it again.
Thanks for listening. I really hope you enjoyed that one. And I'd just like to say I apologise again for the audio issues. Now I have this new sponsor on board, I am hoping to upgrade my router and do whatever I can to try and sort this problem. I still haven't managed to get to the bottom of it, but it is incredibly annoying. So I'm trying to improve here, and yeah, I really appreciate everyone sticking with the show and everyone who's been giving feedback. If you want to support the show, you can use any of the Podcasting 2.0 apps, Fountain or Breeze. If you don't want to part with any sats, then you can rate, review, or share the podcast. All of those things massively help to get this to more listeners and move us up the rankings. Thanks again. Stay ungovernable.